Doom Eternal's a pretty fantastic game. I blew through it in the weekend that I bought it, and I had a lot of fun with it. It takes a lot of what made 2016's Doom reboot so much fun and improves on it in a lot of ways. It's faster, it's gorier, there's more options for the weapons, and there's a really tight gameplay loop that basically forces you to use pretty much every weapon and every mechanic at every conceivable moment at exactly the same time. On top of all of that, the movement options have been expanded greatly, but in spite of how great this game is, there's something about the way the world is designed and the way the movement abilities mesh with it that I can't stop thinking about. You've already seen it in the title of this video, but basically I think that the game's world design and level design clash with how much freedom that the game gives you in its movement systems. Now here's your spoiler warning, I will be spoiling at least some of the gameplay mechanics, so if those are things that you would rather discover for yourself, go ahead and add this video to your watch later list, come back when you're done with the game, and I'll see you then. For the rest of you, let me explain. Pretty early on, you find yourself with the Slayer's full gamut of movement abilities. There's not a whole lot, but there's just enough to help you move around pretty quickly, pretty effectively, and make you feel awesome doing it. You have a double jump, you have a dash, and even though it's not as much of a movement ability as it is an offensive ability, you're able to grapple onto enemies using the grappling hook. You get a single mid-air jump, you can dash twice before it has to recharge, and the hook on the super shotgun has a little bit of a cooldown on it. But you can imagine if you combine these three things in very clever ways, that you'll be able to get to many places that you probably shouldn't be able to. In most games, this would be all but an invitation to do some sort of crazy sequence breaking or finding your way to objectives in ways that are probably unintended and probably very clever on the player's part. However, the way the world is designed absolutely punishes you for trying to go out of your way to do these things. And it's not just these sequence breaks or going around the level in creative ways that gets punished. It's just straight up raw exploration that the game punishes you for, even though it gives you the tools to do it. This is something that really got on my nerves while I was playing Doom. Now there's a lot of exploration in this game. Doom Eternal asks you to go around the level and find these secrets and collect every little thing around every nook and cranny. You got little toys, you got shards that can improve your health, armor, and ammo, you have weapon mods, optional challenge rooms, and slayer gates. All of these things are hidden around secrets that ask you to jump around and explore and show some sort of mastery with Doom Slayer's movement mechanics. And that's all well and good. Some might argue that there shouldn't be this much exploration in a Doom game, but let's leave that aside for now and just talk about how this affects the world design. There's a lot of platforming challenges in this game because of the movement mechanics that you're given, and that makes sense. However, the world is eternally at odds with what the Doom Slayer is capable of. There were many times when I was playing this game where I was trying to find a specific secret in the area that I'm in that was shown to me by the minimap, and I didn't quite know how to get there. But there were some ledges that, went down into a bottomless pit, and when you fall into a bottomless pit in this game, you only take like 25 damage, at least on ultra-violence mode, which is what I was playing it on. So with as easy as it is to get your health back in many situations, I figured, you know what, why not sacrifice some of my health to jump over the ledge and fall a little bit to see if I can find anything interesting underneath this bridge. That's a tactic that I like to use in a lot of games when I'm exploring maps and trying to find secrets. But unfortunately, Doom doesn't seem to be interested in letting you do that. First off, the death plane, which is how far you're able to fall before it warps you back to where you started, is very high. In most levels, you don't fall very far before you get warped back, so you don't really get the opportunity to see anything that's under the level. You don't get much of an opportunity to see where you might go. The only thing that you know is like, oh, hey, yeah, I guess this isn't the right way. But that doesn't stop it from being disappointing because now you're even robbed of being able to see some neat level geometry underneath. And I know more than one of you likes to jump outside of the bounds of a normal level and see how far you can go and see what you can get away with. But that's another thing that's been bothering me. Not only is there a very highly placed death plane that's just like a few feet below whatever platform you're standing on, But there's also a vertical death plane that if you go too far outside of the bounds of the platform in a horizontal way, it will void you out anyway and take you back to where you started. It's not just falling anymore, it's going too far. It's going too far out of the bounds of what the designers and the developers think is acceptable for your gameplay. And that's part of what's been bothering me. And if that wasn't enough, there are so many places in this game that have invisible walls. Every once in a while, I think an invisible wall might be acceptable, especially if you're already, out of bounds and somewhere where you're probably not supposed to be. If there's an invisible wall there to keep you from going too far out of bounds and then possibly breaking the map, I can accept that. That's fine. You're already exploring, and for me at least, I'd be like, oh, hey, I'm not supposed to be here anyway. I guess I can go back now. It'd be a little bit disappointing to run into that there, but at least it's not getting in the way of my normal gameplay. You know what I mean? But instead, what Doom Eternal does is that it places invisible walls just about everywhere you can think of. If you're not supposed to be there, there's probably an invisible wall to stop you from getting there, even if it's a place where you'd be able to normally ledge grab or jump onto just straight up. And it's not always obvious that it's a place where you're not supposed to be. Around the middle of the game, there's one level specifically that comes to mind whenever I'm talking about invisible walls. You're going around this silo structure on the outside of it, kind of like a Space Needle kind of thing. And there's a platform on the outside. But the top of the building is low enough to where you feel like you're going to be able to jump up there and then use that height advantage to get to another platform later on. But as you get around and you find the height necessary to be able to climb up there, you're met with an invisible wall that's literally feet away from the actual surface of the wall. This was a particularly obnoxious instance of the invisible wall problem that plagues an otherwise fantastic game. In my opinion, this is some incredibly contradicting design. On one hand, you're given a lot of movement abilities that allow you to move with unprecedented freedom in this franchise, but on the other hand, all of these limitations are placed in the world to stop you from doing what the designers don't want you to do. I do know that some limitations need to be made so that the average player doesn't make a completely honest mistake and wind up breaking the game in an unfixable way. If you're given all of these movement abilities and all of these ways to traverse the level and possibly get on places that you're not supposed to be, players are going to want to use that ability. That's part of the fun of movement in video games. It's exploring what you can do with the systems that you have. But the designers of Doom Eternal, just like the Slayer, shoots you in the kneecap and tells you too bad, this is the way that it's gonna be. And I hate it when games do that. If you're gonna give me these tools, don't build the world in such a way that punishes me for trying to use them. Instead, build your world in a way that complements them, and maybe even put in extra secrets for the players that figure out how to abuse this in surprising ways. Not to compare Doom Eternal to a Nintendo game, but Super Mario Odyssey does this in a spectacular way. There's so many instances of places in Super Mario Odyssey that you're not supposed to go, but with complete mastery of the movement mechanics, you're able to get on top of levels, and the designers have even placed rewards there for you if you happen to get up there. Extra coins, or maybe even a shortcut to whatever moon that you're trying to go for. Or, on the other hand, if the level designers didn't want you to get to a certain place, build the level in such a way that that is impossible. Like the silo or Space Needle or whatever kind of building example that I mentioned earlier, just make the roof higher or make the platform a little lower. Just don't make an invisible wall that stops me from doing what looks completely possible. That's an easy way to frustrate players, and that was a very easy way to frustrate me. It was even frustrating some of my viewers while I was streaming. They would see me try to jump up to this roof, and then be stymied by an invisible wall that shouldn't even be there in the first place. It was obnoxious. And speaking of contradicting design, and while I'm here complaining about some of the things that this fantastic game does poorly, I'm going to complain about the Marauder. Also around the midpoint of the game, you'll face this guy with a shield. He dashes from side to side, shoots energy beams at you, summons a ghost dog to bite your nads off, and is generally obnoxious when you fight him. Oh, and did I mention that he's literally immune to just about every bullet that you throw at him and every power that you throw at him until his eyes shine green and he goes in for an attack? That's right, in this game where you are rewarded for being as aggressive as possible, as much as possible, you get punished for being aggressive against this specific enemy. You have to sit there, wait for him to hopefully do his attack, and then shoot him. He's got a lot of health and he does a lot of damage, and wherever this guy shows up, there's a lot of fodder demons that also show up doing damage to you while you're trying to take care of him. He shows up as a boss in one level, but in traditional Doom fashion, he comes back as a normal enemy later on, and it's the worst thing in this game. My fun levels tanked to absolute zero every time this guy appeared on my screen, and I'm not afraid to admit I got a little salty every time that I died to his shenanigans, waiting for him to do his attack while I was being pelted from every which direction by fodder demons that kept respawning when I was just trying to get this guy out of my way. If he only appeared once as that boss in the midsection of the game, I'd still hate him, but I think it would be fine. It'd be a nice little change of pace, trying to be a little more reactive than aggressive for once in your miserable life in this game. But for him to show up so many times after that just made every fight with him an unbearable, annoying mess. It brought the flow of combat to a screeching halt, and he ended up killing me a lot, which is part of the source of my frustration. I could see the get good comments down below already. But he's the sole reason that I had to redo so many fights. It's just not a fun enemy or a fun mechanic. I've always hated enemies that have periods of invulnerability, to just have you wait for the right moment to get a shot off or a hit in or just anything to just chip away at a high health pool. It's an obnoxious design, especially in a game like this where you're asked to be as aggressive as humanly possible. In my opinion, that's another point of heavily contradictory design. I didn't have any issues with any of the other demons in this game. I thought they were all fantastic, if not a little simplistic for some of them. And I think that perhaps this Marauder demon was the designer's attempt at bringing in a more complicated demon into the fray, but man, this isn't the way to do it. This is not the way to do it. Other than the Marauder and the weird contradicting world design of this game, Doom Eternal was a fantastic experience. I know I just complained a lot in this video, but I do highly recommend the game. If you liked Doom 2016, I really think you're gonna like Doom Eternal. It's just more of what made Doom 2016 so great, and I hope this franchise keeps improving. If you got this far, thanks for watching. And I want to give a special shout out to Eric Lawrence for being a channel member at the highest tier. Thanks a lot, Eric. Your support means a lot. And to everybody else, I'll see you next time.